Hi everyone, my name is Cameron and I work for the Pikes Peak Library District. Today we're going to be exploring chemistry and photography by making cyanotypes. Cyanotypes are a kind of photographic process where you coat a piece of paper with a solution of chemicals and then expose it to ultraviolet light, like the light we get from the sun, and then the reaction that happens creates this rich blue color. Before everybody had a camera in their cell phone and a digital camera in their pocket, people used film cameras. They used canisters of film like this, and when they clicked the shutter button, light would come through the lens and react with the chemicals that are embedded in this film. And then the film would be developed and printed using nothing but different solutions of chemicals and light. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. We're going to be making some cyanotypes. I'm going to go through the different supplies you might need. Hopefully talk a little bit about the chemistry behind cyanotypes, but I'll warn you, I got a C in chemistry in high school, so I'm mostly going to be relying on the links that I'm putting in the descriptions to kind of explain that part of the process. I learned all about making cyanotypes by using this book. Everything I'm showing you today can be learned in this book. It's available at the Pikes Peak Library District. It's called New Dimensions in Photo Process. And right here you can see it has a whole chapter on cyanotypes. And that's where I learned a lot of this. And by the time this video is posted, this book will be returned to the library for you to put on hold if you want to check it out. But I'm also going to put a lot of links in the program instructions where you can learn about the process and everything that you need without necessarily checking out the book. Because we only have one copy, and if everybody puts a hold on it, it might take a while for you to get it. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope it inspires you to kind of experiment with this process a little bit. It's pretty fun. You don't need a ton of equipment, but you do need some certain supplies, and I'm going to run through all of those with you as well.
Cyanotypes actually date back to the 1840s and eventually found wide use in making construction blueprints. The cyanotypes you can see on the screen right now all come from PPLD's Regional History and Genealogy collection. August is also Colorado History Month, so take a look at some of the things that they're offering to kind of celebrate this time.
Something we need to be aware of with this video is that we will be using chemicals. And if we're using chemicals, we need to talk a little bit about safety. Okay, welcome to the Safety Corner. This is where we're going to talk about safety for today's program on making cyanotypes. We are going to use a solution of two chemicals to coat the paper and make it so that it reacts with the sunlight when we put it outside. Whenever we're using chemicals, we want to make sure that we read all of the instructions that come with the product. This little pamphlet outlines all of the safety information that you need to know about the chemicals and safe usage of them. But just as an overview, the chemicals that we're using today aren't terribly toxic. If you got them on your skin or something, you might get a little tiny bit of irritation, but it's not going to harm your skin or anything like that. It will stain your skin a blue color as soon as you go outside, but it will wash off eventually. It might take a little bit though. Ingesting the chemicals, getting the chemicals in my mouth or my eyes is very bad, and we don't want to have that happen today. So I'm going to be wearing long sleeve shirts with big rubber gloves while I'm working with the chemicals. I'm going to have my eyes protected with safety goggles, and I'm going to cover my mouth with a face covering just to make sure I keep the fumes out, and I'm not at risk of getting any of those chemicals in my mouth. So be sure that you read these safety instructions closely. If you're younger, be sure that you're doing this under the supervision of an adult who can help you with these safety things. We don't want anybody to get harmed by this process. We're just trying to have fun, make some images, and kind of explore some chemistry and things like that. Okay, that's it for the safety corner. Next, we're going to talk about the supplies that you need to do this program.
Let's talk supplies. There are quite a few supplies you're going to need to complete this program and make some cyanotypes. Most of them are fairly inexpensive, but I think if you were going to need everything that I'm showing here from scratch, you'd probably spend about $50. But you can make maybe a few hundred cyanotypes with those supplies. You can really explore, really experiment, really try different things with this process kind of once you have the idea going. The first thing that we're going to need are our chemicals. So this is the Cyanotype kit that I have used. There are other brands around that offer the same thing. This is just the one that I have used, and it's always worked fine. It's 2 bottles. It comes with a solution A and a solution B. And what we're going to do is mix these 2 chemicals in equal parts and then paint the solution onto paper. And then let that paper dry, and then we'll move forward from there. So there's a few steps in the process as well. I'll kind of outline those here too. So you don't need any special measuring equipment if you don't have that. I wouldn't put these in anything that you use in the kitchen unless you have a way to like sterilize them afterwards. Just to be safe, keep it to things that you can either throw out, or if you have some like special measuring jars, that'll work too. But the nice thing is that the mix is equal parts. So it doesn't really matter how much we use of each chemical. It just matters that we're using the same amount of each chemical and mixing them together. So if you don't have like a measuring cup, you can use something like this. This is just the bottom of a rubbing alcohol container. And I put a little mark on the bottom and then put a bit of solution A in here up to this mark, poured it into another container, then poured a bit of solution B up to this mark and poured that in the same container with solution A. Then I know they're pretty much the same. I give it a little stir, and then we're ready to coat our paper. You'll also need something like a paintbrush. If you don't, in order to coat the paper, you can just like dump both of these bottles all into one big receptacle, but the solution only lasts for about 6 hours after you mix it. So you don't want to do that unless you want to coat a ton of paper at one time. So you also need paper for this program, and you do need uncoated paper. So like the paper that you buy for your printer at home, that won't really work for this. You need something like sketch pads or watercolor paper. This is just a sketch pad, and I just kind of tear a page out as I need it, and then I paint the solution on top. So you need uncoated paper. But if you go into like an art supply store and ask for watercolor paper or sketchbook paper, that will work just as well. All right. You are also going to need a picture frame. This is just a really cheap picture frame. It cost a couple bucks. And all you really need is the piece of glass and the little backing paper. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put our backing paper down, then our piece of coated paper, and then we're going to put the image on top of the coated paper. Finally, we'll put the glass on it to sandwich it all together, and we'll secure that on the sides with binder clips so it won't come apart. And we just want to make sure that whatever we're putting on top of the coated paper is tight down and there aren't like waves in it. Okay, so a cheapo picture frame will work nicely. If you just have one around the house that you're not using, that will work just as well as buying one. Those are kind of the general supplies you need just to kind of make an image. But now is when the fun kind of starts, because we get to think about what we're going to design and make. So we'll use this one as an example. This is a picture I took of a tree. That's kind of it. But I thought this one looked kind of neat when it came out, especially with the blue color. So this was a piece of the coated paper. We did coat the entire piece of paper with the solution. And then what we're going to do is put a transparency on top of that paper. So this is the same as this, except this is a negative image. So all of these parts that are dark are going to block the light from hitting the paper, and all of these parts that are light are going to let more light through. So what happens after we do it like this so you can see it, what happens after we put this down is that the sunlight isn't going to get to like these sections of the sky as much as it is in these sections of the branches. So what we'll end up is with a positive image like this. And if I can line this up, well, you can kind of see how that works. All these dark parts end up bright in the final image, and these light parts are a bit lighter and they have some more detail in them. So you can make these transparencies in a couple different ways. One is to use something like this, printable transparency paper. So I went into the computer and I took this image and I inverted the colors. And then I printed this out onto this transparency film. You can get this for laser printers or inkjet printers. You may need to look at what kind of printer you have. But you can kind of do whatever you want with these. You don't have to do a picture like this. You could print out text. Will block the light. If you have dark text, the text will end up white in the final image. But you can also do things like collages, which is one that I'll be showing you, or really just kind of play around with anything that lets light through in a strange way. I was looking through my house and I found a box of marbles. I know that sounds random, but I have a lot of strange things in kind of my workshop room. And I put the marbles down on the paper and set them outside just to kind of see what would happen. And you got this cool pattern of where it blocked and let through the light in different ways. So maybe just look through your house to see if you have things that reflect light in different ways. And then you can just kind of play around and you get these neat textures and things like that. And then you can use the paper for whatever you want. They make cool notes and things like that. So that's how you make your image. And you'll be seeing that further in the video. And then besides those things, you'll need kind of an area where you can wash the piece of paper. So you can do it like in your kitchen sink with the sprayer, because when you spray the piece of paper and wash it with water, the water washes away the areas that haven't reacted as much to the chemicals as the areas that let through more light. So like this one again, all around the edge is clear, and on here it's all dark blue. So here, let in more light. The chemical solution reacted more, and then it stayed in the paper. Whereas the chemicals that didn't react as much were just able to wash away, and we get the differences in color like this. All right. So the next part of the process is coating our paper and mixing the chemical solution. Again, you just need to mix these in equal parts. It doesn't matter how much you do at a time, but like I said, you have about 4 to 6 hours to work with it before it kind of goes bad. So I'm going to coat this paper. You're going to see some video of that, and then we're going to let that paper dry. And finally, we'll put our transparencies on top and then put them out in the sun.
And here's some video of me coating the paper with our chemical solution. You can see in the background, that's the bottom of my rubbing alcohol bottle where I mixed the two chemicals together. And I just dip a paintbrush in and spread it about the paper. One good thing, you want to try to keep it as even as possible. So alternate your brush strokes, go down all one way and then across the other way, just to make sure there aren't like little puddles of the chemical solution anywhere. But you do want to make sure you get a nice good coat on before you hang it up to dry. You can see I'm wearing my big rubber gloves. I'm also doing this in my bathroom because I have an exhaust fan in there. So I have the exhaust fan on. I have my eyes and my nose and mouth protected. So I am trying to be really safe here. I also have my counters covered because I don't want to get them stained with the chemical solution. I'm also doing this in my bathroom because it doesn't have any windows in it. And you do need to either coat the paper at night when the sun is not out, or in a room that you can kind of close off from sunlight as much as possible. So I'm doing it in my bathroom. It doesn't have any windows, and I'll be able to hang up and dry in there without reacting at all. So I'm just painting the solution on. I'm not trying to be too careful. I'm just trying to make it even so that we have a nice coating of this chemical solution on the paper. And once you have that done, you need to hang the paper up to dry. It'll take a few hours to dry, so maybe it's good to do it overnight because then you don't have to worry about the sunlight as much. But then once you're dry, it's time to make some photos, which is the really fun part. Here you can see the coated paper hanging up to dry. It's a kind of a yellow color, and then when we put that outside, that yellow color is going to react with the sun and turn blue eventually. But first it's time to make a few sandwiches. We're going to line up our dried out paper on the backer board from the picture frame. Then we're going to put in our transparency and top that off with a piece of glass from the picture frame. Put that on top, make sure it sits down nice, and we're going to secure it with some binder clips. And here you can see me making the nature collage that I talked about. I'm arranging a piece of the coated paper in a thing called a contact printer, which just makes this whole thing a little bit easier. But I'm adding a clipping from one of the branches from a tree because those leaves will block the light just like our transparency will. Then I'm adding a photo of the tree that I have. I think I'm thinking about rearranging it, but I decided against it. And finally, I'm adding a little printed label that has the name of the tree on it. In this case, it's called Rocky Mountain Juniper. And I'm going to take that outside. And here's a look of that nature collage sitting out in the sun. And this is the kind of the part of the program where you really are going to have to experiment a little bit. Because we can't control the sun, unfortunately. The sun is different during different times of the day. It's at different angles. There's clouds in different spots. So how long you leave it out in the sun is really going to depend on the weather conditions that day. And you'll kind of just have to try one and see what it looks like. And then you can adjust your times from there. I left this one outside for about 15 minutes. And as you can see, as I'm washing it here, it didn't quite get as dark as I would like. So I'm going to have to make a few more to kind of dial in that time to make sure all the little elements I have in there come out nicely. And what you're seeing me do right now in the video is washing the cyanotype. I've brought it in from outside. I've taken the photo and the branch off the top of it, and I've put it into this tray of water, and I'm just kind of slowly agitating the water back and forth to rinse off the chemicals that haven't reacted as much as the parts where there wasn't anything blocking the light. Like I said earlier, you could do this in the kitchen with the spray hose on your sink. I'm just doing it here in my bathtub because it's a little easier and I have the trays. So I'm going to do this washing motion for probably about a minute until it looks like it's stopped changing color. And then I'm going to move it to that blue tray to the left and leave it in there for a little bit to rinse before hanging it up to dry. There you can see me taking that out. You have to be a little bit careful not to tear the paper. It gets pretty delicate, but it's not too bad. Yeah. And if you rip one, you can always make another one. That's the beauty of this process. And I'll need to make another one of that image anyway, because like I said, it didn't come out quite dark enough.
All right, so here's a look at some of the cyanotypes I made today. Here's that nature collage that I was talking about. I really like the way that these leaves look on this paper and also this label that turned out really well, but this part didn't work so well. I'm going to have to experiment with the times I'm working with a little bit more to kind of get this part of this image to look a little better. Here's an example of one I've made at a different point that looks a bit closer to what I'm going for. Here's the kind of the sculpture from Denver. This one I left out too long because I lost all of this area here. So this one I would, if I make it again, I'm going to cut down on the time that I'm using a little bit. And then here's another one that I didn't leave out very long at all, just to show you what it looks like when you need to leave it out in the sun longer. We didn't get very good detail at all, especially compared to this one, which has some pretty good detail in it. But one thing I like about this one is the brush strokes that you can see. You can kind of play around with those too, again, to kind of get different textures. I think I'm going to be doing something like this with these this marble pattern that I made. So that's a little closer look at the cyanotypes. Like I said, it's just kind of a process of experimenting and trying to get the look that you're looking for. This one I think is pretty close in terms of this part and this part, but I need to work on this area a little more to get something where we can see all of this nice detail in the trees and in the trunk here. So that's it for today's program on cyanotypes. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it inspires you to get out there, dig into this process a little bit more using the resources in the programming instructions and making your own cyanotypes. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time you're at the library.